Hello and welcome to our Secular Buddhist Essentials class. My name is Venerable Tarpa. I am so happy to be here. It's another Sunday. It's a beautiful Easter Sunday. Uh, it's a beautiful spring Sunday for us all. Beautiful weather here in South Bend, Indiana. And I am thrilled to be teaching our class today. Today, I did a little switcheroo. Last class, I talked about we were going to be exploring the self, and we are going to be, but I thought I really wanted to share something before we get to that. I decided, as you all know, we're working on this text as we're teaching it, which we're probably crazy to be doing, but it is kind of fun. And the nice thing is we're getting a lot of input from the Sangha into what we do, but organizing it kind of is complicated. Nevertheless, I decided that the Buddhist teachings on the two truths, I think, really needs to be done at the beginning of the text. So I'm going to share it now before we get into the more technical considerations. Um, and the two truths, it's um, it's a Buddhist methodology for analysis, and we're going to be using it for all of the following complicated topics ahead. And um, and actually, the Buddha didn't teach it. It's actually a development in later Buddhism, though the roots of it are found in the sutras, the early Buddhist texts. So this is a structure referred to as the two truths. Basically, the true truths assert that there are two main ways of perceiving or knowing phenomena, ourselves, and our environment. There's our everyday surface level perception and the deeper perception uncovered through analysis. Two perceptions referred to as conventional truth and ultimate truth. Here, conventional truth describes how things appear and function, whereas ultimate truth describes the way they ultimately exist. In this context, truth refers to not so much correct fact as accurate perception. So, conventional truth, again, is often known as relative or superficial truth, our common everyday surface level of perception, that which is true from a surface level point of view. You're walking down the street, you're looking around, you're seeing cars, you're seeing trees, you're seeing flowers, you're seeing birds. No analysis going on. You're just perceiving the world. We call this conventional truth. You could call it common truth, right? And then we have ultimate truth, which is considered definitive or penetrating truth, a deeper perception uncovered through analysis, that which is true from a more refined viewpoint. For Buddhists, ultimate truth includes the proper understanding of the Buddhist teachings and the model of reality. So let me give you a couple examples to help you understand that. So let's take an example of money, paper money. So conventionally, money, when we just normally looking at money, money is a valuable commodity and an essential aspect of life, no doubt. But when we look closer, we realize that ultimately, money has no value of its own. It's simply a piece of paper. Its value depends entirely on our shared agreement that it has money based on conditions and contacts, right? Now, both statements are true, aren't they? Just from different points of view. Clearly, the first was true. We hold money, you're going to protect that. You're going to be able to buy things with it. Very important. But ultimately, that value is just something we all agree upon, isn't it? How about another example? How about the example of a rainbow? One of my favorites. So conventionally, rainbows appear vividly in the sky. They can be seen, they can be photographed, and even created. Ultimately, rainbows are merely a play of light, water droplets, and the viewer's perspective, right? Depending on where you stand, the rainbow happens, right? If I'm not mistaken, the sun has to be behind you, the rain droplets in front of you. And again, both statements are true, aren't they? But just from different perspectives, right? Clearly rainbows exist. They're there. Conventionally, no problem. But then ultimately, when you look at it deeper, that belief that they exist kind of starts to unravel. Well, how does it exist? Sure, it's an appearance, but it's surely not as existent as it seems to be. Now, both conventional and ultimate truth are considered true because they represent two different but valid ways of perceiving or knowing, meaning they're both considered true just in different ways, operating on different levels of understanding. And although we can only directly perceive one truth at a time, the two are not opposed, but instead they're complementary, layered views that are always available for us to utilize. Now, this presentation I just gave you is a very simple one, and I think it offers a lot of clarity. But as we begin to share the deeper concepts of the Buddhist teachings in this text, we'll naturally be expanding and deepening our understanding of them. This is especially true in relation to ultimate truth, which in Buddhism reaches the deepest levels of analysis. Ultimate truth focuses on the true existential nature of phenomena and reality. What do you guys think? Is that a pretty clear presentation? Another example I often think about is water, right? Conventionally, water, we all know, right? It's in David's background, it's in Sampo's background. We drink it, no problem there. When we look at it deeply, we can we can see it in a different way. We can see, oh, well, water is actually hydrogen and oxygen. Now, do you notice that the ultimate view doesn't eradicate the conventional? It just explains it. It gives us the ability to look at it a deeper way. So both views benefit each other, right? It's just a question of how you're looking at things. Even even a great practitioner who can see things at very, very deep levels. But when he's just walking around, or maybe when he's having dinner, he's just saying, pass me the chop suey, very conventional, right? Instead of saying, pass me the glutinous bread, glutinous substance made from wheat, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. David, please.
Yeah, it just seemed to me from your example, say, of the water, that it's not so much twofold, it's more of a continuum because you can just see the water, it's blue, da, da, da. You can see it a bit deeper. Oh, it's liquid, it moves about the place. You can look at it a bit deeper. Oh, it's made of hydrogen and oxygen. You can look at it a bit deeper. Seems like there's a bit of a continuum as far as the actual truth goes.
Kind of. The thing about it is that generally we can't see both at the same time. That's right. So remember that these are related mostly to perception, perceiving how we see things to be. So when you point at the ocean and say, there's water, that's absolutely a true perception. There's no doubt about that. But if you point to it and say, hey, that body out there is hydrogen and oxygen, it's also true, right? I don't think water is the best example of that. But like our example of money, I think is a pretty good one. When you point to money, you talk about money conventionally. That's absolutely true. It's agreed upon. We all know it. But then we can also look at it at this deeper level. But for human beings, we're really kind of stuck between this common way of looking at things and the analytical view. It's like a switch our brain does. They often say that Buddhas are the only beings that can perceive both at the same time.
Hmm.
But I agree, I think there's a little leeway there. And it's not that one eradicates the other. They're both true. It's just a matter of what you can focus on. Maybe it ties into what we talk about with mind, about that the mind can only entertain one concept at a time. So when the mind's entertaining a conventional perception, it can only do that. It can switch back and forth rapidly. Yeah. But these topics become really important when we start talking about ourselves and the true nature of reality. When we talk about the very building blocks, that's really for Buddhism, that's really the two truths are really about existential reality, existential existence, how things really exist. Thank you, David. Always an awesome question. Any
Thank you for having me.
questions about it? You guys, is it clear? Yeah, Ethan, please. Nandag.
Sure. Well, I have one question. Where do you see I guess, the similarities and differences between, you know, um, conventional and ultimate truth versus subjective and objective truth? Um, two different, obviously two different kind of ways of thinking of it. Where do you see the commonality or differences?
So they're related to them, but not directly. So because both both ultimate and conventional truth are still subjective. So when we look at reality, we look at reality as being we look at the world as having two realities, right? An objective physical reality. Like if there were no beings on this planet, the earth would still exist, rocks, trees, water, that would all be there. That's objective reality. Subjective reality is our conceptual framework in which we process all of that. We're going to be talking about all this in great detail in classes to come. So the idea is conventional and the ultimate truth are based on both. Convention or common perception, common truth, is based on both subjective and objective reality. Because remember, subjective reality never stands on its own. It's an overlay of objective reality. There is no subjective reality without objective reality. So both of them have actually both. Good question. Making me work hard today. And so the next question might be, hey, that's great, Tarpa. How does that benefit our lives? This is a method of analysis that we're going to be using throughout this program. Um, the reason why investigating the nature of reality is important is just like anything else, the more we understand things, the better we are to work with them. When, say, we have some fears, the more we understand that fear, the less power it has over us, right? You have a fear of snakes and you slowly get used to snakes, learn everything you can about them. That's the best way to overcome the fear. Well, that's how life works too. The more we understand life, the easier life gets and the less we suffer. Imagine primitive a man hearing thunder and thinking that it's the end of the world. They would have been just afraid to death in their caves of it, right? And then all of a sudden, science comes along and says, "Oh, that's just weather. That's just electricity in the air, or however it's formed." And through that knowledge, all of a sudden, we're not so afraid of thunder anymore, right? This is how understanding works to benefit our lives. Understanding our suffering as well. When we understand our emotions, when we understand how our brain functions, when we understand how life works, who and what we are, how we function, how we interact with others, how life works, really, we really understand the whole thing. You can just imagine how much better life is, isn't it? The things you want, you're actually able to attain, right? There's no self sabotage in life. That's the reason why living an examined life is the goal of Buddhism. Because when we understand these things, life becomes easier, life becomes better, and we attain our aims easily. So, this is just part of it. This part two of our book is based on that, is based on analyzing reality. And the Buddha talks about this is the Buddha's model of the nature of reality, his investigation and conclusions of how life works. And the Buddha is very clear. It's like, hey, this is why you're suffering. And he lays it out. And he says, now, when you change the way you understand the world, you change that and you free yourself of that suffering, right? So that's why it's important to us. I often have a funny analogy. I talk about, say, we're playing a board game and nobody really knows how the board game works, and everybody's kind of winging it. But I'm smart. I keep the box top with all the instructions on it, right? And I got that over here. Who do you think's going to win that game? Who do you think is going to have the most fun playing that game? I'm going to beat everybody. It's like life, right? If we're not born with a manual for life. In some ways, we can think of the Buddhist teachings like that, a manual for living a fruitful life, a successful life, a happy life. But we do that through investigation. So the Buddha's trying to teach us this is what life is. And as we become smarter, we become happier. Any questions? Gosh, is this the shortest class I've ever taught in my life? Sanpo.
I've got a question here. Is it Patrick? By saying that there are truths are we actually experiencing the world differently as individuals, or are they more of different ways of speaking about reality with others socially?
Yeah, both. They're truths to the general way human beings perceive the world. They're truths on generally the way the human brain, the process and mechanism of perception works. And at the same time, it is unique to each one of us. There's always that subjective uniqueness because each one of us has a slightly unique mind. So you got a little bit of both going on, right? So common existence, conventional truth, is much more subjective, but that's based on objectivity as well. When you're a little kid and you get those little books that help you remember all the names of the animals and the flags of countries, and you memorize all the names of the cities in your country. That's all part of it, right? And then when you see those things, you have that common understanding of what it is. You go to the zoo when you're a kid, you can name the animals. There's a lion, so there is a general commonality about it all, right? It's something we call the collective conceptual construct. We're going to be talking about that later. That we do have this social construct in our minds that we all share. And that's a fascinating topic. So yeah, very much so. It's both. Yeah. But the Buddha is really outlining how human beings kind of see the world, perceive the world. Excellent question, Patrick. And I think when we share this, the next time we teach it, I'm going to share the intro to this chapter at the same time. And then I think it'll equal one nice class. But I wanted to make this simple. I've given longer presentations of this, but I wanted to just give a basic understanding because we're going to be using this as we move forward. We did a little bit the other day. You remember we were talking about what constitute a person, and we were saying that, we can see a person and say, "Hey, Tom," and we all say, "Hey, Tom," and there he is. He's a single static phenomena. But then when we look closer, we realize, oh, Tom's existence is much more complex than that, isn't it? Tom his body isn't a single thing. It's made up of all kinds of organs and functions and methods and fluids. And then he has a name, which is a conceptual name. And then his mind is complex with all kinds of memories and likes and dislikes. And so you can see that conventionally we just see people as people. But then, especially when we get to know people, we start to see them in a much more deep way, a more profound way, right? A more detailed way. That's the two ways that we perceive the world. So that's very important to understand. Oh my goodness, am I going to be able to let everybody off early on a Sunday?
I have another question, Tarpa.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. So, this may be kind of fun. So, let's say someone was born on a desert island and they were able to take care of themselves, and they never experienced meeting other people. Would they still experience conventional truth, or would they just experience ultimate truth?
It's the way the mind works. Even if they had no input at all, that's just what the mind does. So
Mm,
say you see something that you haven't seen before, a strange animal. uh, Initially your mind works very hard looking at all the details to try to understand what that thing is. And you say, oh, pointy teeth, this or that. You determine whether it's dangerous or safe, whether it's edible or not, right? Once you have all that information and you've seen that animal many, many times, you disregard the detail and it's just koala bear. So it's just the way our minds work. But you wouldn't possess a collective conceptual construct because you never met someone else. It would just be a conceptual construct.
okay. No, that's helpful because when I think of convention, like conventional truth, I think of like social convention usually, but I guess you could have conventional ways of looking at things independently too.
And then also keep in mind how many people that you know fit into that example you gave. You ever meet anybody on a desert island that's taking care of themselves and never met anybody?
No, even Tom Hanks in Castaway had the volleyball friend, and
Exactly. Yeah.
and he grew up with people. Yeah.
Oh, they'd be so dull, wouldn't they? Oh my goodness. No language, no. Yeah. Very good. Oh, Namdak, please, sure.
I had a question. So, kind of early in the beginning, you mentioned something that the two truths wasn't something that like the Buddha specifically taught himself. So, in that case, I was wondering a little about your knowledge of or your view of the history of where it came from, why it started, like what's the
Sure.
origin of that?
Yeah, so the Buddha talks about these various views throughout the sutras, and he implements them in his own teaching. He calls himself the Buddha. He calls his student, Ananda. That's Clearly, that's conventional, right? The Buddha perceives conventional. He teaches through it. He uses subjective pronouns, right? You, me, I. But then at the same time, he hints that those are just conceptual conventions, that they don't really have any kind of inherent existence on their own. They're made up by us. They're real. Names are real. Rula is a beautiful name. It's a real name. It really is Rula's name. But does it exist objectively? Of course not. It's a convention. Her parents said, hey, let's call her Rula. That's a pretty name. And she tells us her name and we use it. So it's real. You yell her name, she turns her head. She says, stop bothering me. Right? So back to your point. So the Buddha talks about it in various ways with various terms. Um, many believe that the two truths can't be found in the Theravada tradition, and that's mistaken. It's there, especially in the Abhidharma. The Abhidharma is very clearly there. The Mahayana take it to a whole nother level. The Mahayana make it metaphysical. And one of again, what makes all these Buddhist topics so difficult is all the different presentations that are competing to be known, right? And the Mahayana, they turn it, some of the Mahayana schools, some of the Tibetan schools, turn it into quite a metaphysical thing, even equating ultimate truth to nirvana and conventional truth to samsara, which our school, the Sankappa, our school SBT completely rejects. That's philosophically just a terrible argument. Like we talked about, that they're interwoven and we utilize both all the time. It's just a question of how you look at the object, right? You always have the choice. There's an apple on the table. You always have the choice to look at it conventionally, oh, an apple, or you decide to look at it deeper and try to understand the nature of its existence. Well, it appears to me that apple is 78% water, and so we always have that ability. So they don't have anything to do with nirvana or samsara. They just have to do with the mechanism of perception for sentient beings, right? Oh, and did I cover the history of it? So it does exist in the Theravada, which is many people, including myself in the past, said it didn't, but it is there, and it's profound. And if you think about it, how can anybody really deny that? How can people deny in life that you can't see things like that, right? It's the difference between a scientist and a farmer. Well, maybe a farmer's bad example because he has to look deeply into his produce, right? Or you just say a kid looking at an apple and a scientist looking at an apple. I mean, in life, these two ways of perceiving things can't be denied. The only difference in Buddhism is the very depth of which they go. So it's not so much, it's more of a philosopher's way of perceiving things more than a scientist's way. Because a scientist is still he's still a rationalist. He's still looking at things quite objectively, where the philosopher's taking it even deeper to the fabric of existential reality itself. David.
So if ultimate truth is that not part of the direction towards nirvana that distinguishes it from conventional truth?
Yeah, here's the thing. The term ultimate, I think, is really misleading here. Um, they use the word ultimate truth. They use the word absolute truth, which is even worse. But really, it's more about a deeper truth. What was the language that I used in it? Um, Definitive or penetrating truth. I really like the word penetrating truth. And let's change the word truth for perception. So the first one is conventional. We can just call that common perception. And the second one is penetrating perception. Now, to me, that's super accurate. I try not to mess with the terms, the established terms in Buddhism too much. We want to be able to communicate with the Buddhist world. So yeah, that word, and especially the word absolute, as agnostic, you know, I'm agnostic about absolute truth. I don't really think there is such a thing. Truth is always subjective or changing. You know, truth is always even some type of higher truth. Our ability to understand truth is in a state of constant change. So remember, truth is only existent within a mind. Truth doesn't exist objectively, right? Truth is a consideration of a mind. And so it's always subjective and it's always changing, right? So what they're trying to say there is more penetrating. Even definitive isn't really a great term, again, because it kind of shows some kind of higher upmost point. Now, according to pertaining to your question, understanding the true nature of reality and how things work is essential for awakening. So the great quote, the saying in Buddhism, they say, Buddhas can't wash away sin with water. Buddhas can't heal with their hands. Buddhas can't pass on their realization to others. The only thing Buddhists can do is teach the nature of reality. When we talk about the nature of reality, the nature of oneself and the nature of reality are the same, right? So they're one and the same. So that's the big thing the Buddha is teaching. And especially when you start to understand the true nature of yourself, how your mind and body function, how all this mechanism works, how we look at the world, that is the path to awakening. And some would say awakening is awakening to that truth. We call it right view, right? Right view is, again, those words are kind of messed up too. Right doesn't mean absolutely correct, but it means a more proper perspective. We want to take the ultimate out of that. So, right view is just a clearer perspective. Oh, I like that one. So, that's right view. So, as you can imagine, ultimate truth, the definition almost sounds the same. Yeah, so right view is the Buddha figured it out. He figured out how life works. He figured out how humanity works, what the problem is with humanity. And he talks about it's all related to the way we see ourselves in the world. We see ourselves in a very diluted way. And if you fix that, life is better. And we call that awakening. So awakening to our true nature and the true nature of reality. We say that a lot, don't we? Even in the skillful living group. So yeah, that's definitely related to penetrating perception or perspective.
Jose has his hand up.
Jose.
So basically, is enlightenment the difference between enlightenment and samsara, how we perceive reality? Is that basically the gist of it, or is there more to that?
It is. So samsara and nirvana are mental states, right? Now, there's always an argument. Samsara for people that believe in rebirth. Samsara is translated as the cycle of rebirth, that you just keep getting reborn, you can't stop it. Now, some people say that that's samsara, where other people argue that no, the mental state itself is samsara, and that's what creates the cycle of rebirth. The Dalai Lama has that belief, and I do as well. I see samsara and nirvana. Nirvana clearly a mental state. You can't argue because it's not an ontological state. So I like to think of it very simply as this: samsara is afflicted existence. It's existing with an afflicted mind. Nirvana is unafflicted existence, an unafflicted mind. And that's described by the Buddha himself for enlightenment, that we see a Buddha as being free of any and all afflictions. And so when the Buddha talks about Mara, which is often wrongly believed to be a devil for Westerners, that's why I don't talk about it. It's not. Mara is the archetype of afflictions. Mara is the afflictions within us, all those aspects, the afflicted mind, and Buddha is the non-afflicted mind. They're opposites.
Patrick has a question, Tarpa. How does ultimate penetrating truth relate to emptiness?
It's the mechanism for finding it, for discovering it through the analysis of ultimate of penetrating truth. That's where we find the truth of dependent origination, emptiness, all the topics we're going to be talking about in the next couple weeks coming. And what you don't know is I'm setting you all up for it already. I'm talking about these things in a very general way, and we're going to narrow it more and more down to the subjects themselves. But that's the idea. That's why we're engaging in investigating life, because we want to see, how does everything really work, right? And we do that through investigation. Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? And I'm going to hold your hands through the whole thing. But ultimately, at the end, the hope is that you are left with the feeling that, wow, I finally know who and what I am, and what I'm doing with my life, and what's beneficial, what my real aims are, how to achieve those aims, how these afflictions come about and are overwhelming me. How do I get rid of these afflictions? Ultimately, is how do I be happy? Mastering our minds so we can be happy. Understanding everything there is to be us, right? And it works. Understanding is the secret to everything. When you understand how things are, you can work with them. You know, you can get your mind around things, no matter what it is. You got a problem, understand everything you can about that problem. That's how we transcend those things. And that's what the two truths are. They're showing us these two different ways to perceive and understand the world. So very, very important. But in our presentation, I really tried to leave out, my last presentation, I kept going through the different interpretations and saying why they were all wrong. And I said, why do that? Why don't you just tell people simply what it is? It's not a complicated subject. It's just that some people make the two truths into some kind of metaphysical thing, and which they really aren't. Well, I'd like to talk all day, but you know, it's a beautiful day out and I want to get out and have some fun. Sound good? I'll post the script that I wrote for it up for after class. And also next week, we're going to be back at self, which we were going to teach this week. And then digging in the self, you're going to go, oh, now I know why Tarpa needed to jump in with the two truths. It's going to really help us to understand those, because we're going to do both. We're going to understand self conventionally, which we already understand. But then we're going to dig into some investigation. It's going to be fun. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. Hey, we're still doing a big fundraiser for our move to Asheville, North Carolina, which is supposed to be at the end of the month, depending if I get my new teeth or not. So if anybody would like to pitch in, we could really use your help. And you can make a deposit, a donation on our website, sbtonline.org. And with that said, why don't we end today's class with our altruistic affirmation? May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry. May all abide in constant appreciation, which is the source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks for coming, and remember that SBT was created for one purpose: to support you, the practitioner. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tarpa.
Thank you,
Bye.
Daniel.